All righty, all righty. Well, we'll go ahead and get started for our 2023 Interfaith Summit. We are so glad that you are here. We're elephant happy and hippopotamus glad that you've decided to join us today. Even in this inclement weather, you've decided to come on out. So we're so glad. And we're also so glad for our virtual audience, which you'll be able to see shortly on the screen here. So I'm the Reverend Vernon K. Walker, and I am the program director of the Communities Responding to Extreme Weather, which is the leading organization to help bring about this summit. But we didn't do it alone, and we'll get to thanking our partners shortly. But we also have some team members here from Crew. We have Samantha Palladini from who's our Climate Resilience Hub, who you'll hear from later. Then we have Lee Muner from Crew, who is our project coordinator and doing outstanding work. And we're glad to have you. And we're glad to have you here. So we want to thank our partners. So this is our 5th annual Interfaith Summit. We've been able to hold this over the last 5 years. And this is one of our annual events as we are preparing for extreme weather. We're preparing for hotter summers, warmer winters, etc. So, and the importance of the Interfaith Summit is to help rally around our shared values, because we know that many different traditions, many different faith traditions have this idea of do unto others as you want done to yourself, and essentially being a good neighbor to one another, being a good Samaritan. So for us at Crew, the way we think about social resilience in the face of extreme weather is that we're stronger together than we are apart. We are able to help people suffer less when extreme weather happens. And we saw this in 1995, what happened in Chicago when 739 people died. And it was proven from many clinical studies that neighbors that were isolated were most vulnerable to extreme weather. But neighbors that were socially connected were able to withstand the heat. So we want to thank our partners here that have gathered with us and that has been a part of the planning team. So we want to thank the Jewish Climate Action Network. We want to thank the Mass Interfaith Power and Light. We want to thank the Cooperative Metropolitan Ministries. We want to thank Food Link for the wonderful sweet treats. We want to thank Felipe's, which will be here soon. We want to thank the Humanist Chaplaincy for partnering with us, and the overall chaplaincy here at Tufts for partnering with us. We want to thank Old South. We want to thank the North American Indian Center of Boston. We want to thank Hero. We want to thank Mosaic. We want to thank FGS Boston and many others. We want to thank so many for being here. So we will proceed as such with the program, and we will have our singers come, Jenny Bonham Carter and Walter Cooper. They comprise of the Interfaith Coalition Singers, and we're glad to be blessed by the ministry of their music.
We're so pleased to be here. And this was the song I think we did last year, but that's okay because it's such a good and important song, and you're all going to sing with us. Keep your eyes on the prize. Thank you for the translation as well. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. We'll do that one more time. Keep your eyes
on the prize. Hold on.
To all our leaders who came before, you gave us courage and so much more.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
To a tribute we want to pay to you, to your principles you stay true.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Hold on.
Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes. Hold on.
Sing it one more time. Hold on. Hold on.
Hold on.
Hold on.
Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. You've inspired us not to behave, but to walk the walk that you have paved. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Together, hand in hand against, we will keep up. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Hold on.
Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
We must work for all it's worth to protect our Mother Earth.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
And in so doing, there's no doubt injustice must be ruled out.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Hold on.
Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
And this little verse is especially for you who are watching online. Thank you for being with us. And this little verse, what came to us during COVID, when so many of us had to isolate. While far apart, we feel so near, and we're not giving in to fear.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
In the midst of struggle and strife, we see a glimpse of a different life.
Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Hold on.
Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Hold on.
Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Your eyes. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes
on the prize.
on. Oh.
Thank you so much for that wonderful rendition of keeping your eyes on the prize. Hold on. We also want to announce we do have Spanish translation. So for whatever language that folks speak, please feel free to log into that language. So we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that. So we have the next portion of our program. We're going to ask John Luke to come on up to lead us in the land acknowledgement. And let's welcome John Luke as John Luke comes.
As is our practice, we as what you now call indigenous peoples, the peoples who continue in our languages, our songs and our stories, the memory that is embedded within these lands of Turtle Island. It is our practice as First Peoples, before we acknowledge who we are, is incumbent upon us to acknowledge where we stand. And so we are here in this space that we now call Tufts University, in a watershed that is held by the Mystic River. And we think back centuries of time to the first peoples that were here. We think about the Massachusetts, the Nipmuc, the Pennacook, people that were here since time immemorial, whose descendants continue on this land. And yet, in those times where we are now on solid land, perhaps there was water. Where we now know water to be, perhaps there was land. And so we also acknowledge the agency of the land and the waters themselves. We acknowledge the agency and the lives and the memories of the plants, of the animals, the trees, the four-legged, those that have wings, those that continue on these lands today. And we think about this time that we know as today. We think of ourselves and we think of who we are. Myself, I am Jean-Luc Perit. My people are the Tunica Biloxi tribe of Louisiana. I am originally from Balbancha, which you now know as New Orleans. My grandmother is also Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. We have our own systems. We have our own ways of knowing. I have my ways in which I have continued to move on these lands. And yet, as I am here, we continue to weave together the stories of the land to this day. And we also think about the generations to come. We think about our descendants so that when we are buried on these lands, that they will continue the songs and the stories that we hold today as future ancestors for those people, for the world, the seeds that we plant today, and our hope for the future. For all of that, we acknowledge and we commit ourselves and our lives and our work. Aho, Ashe, Tikach, thank you.
Thank you so much, John-Luc, to remind us what lands we are on. So the next portion of our program, we will have the theme breakdown, and we're going to ask Rabbi Katie Allen to come up to do our theme breakdown. And for those who might not know what the theme is, our theme is stories of the spirit, the roles of communities, and responding to extreme weather. And as we highlighted and elucidated a little bit earlier, community is important, and community is the way to withstand the threats from extreme weather. The community is the way to help foster climate adaptation, and community is the way in which we can fight for a more just and equitable world. Certainly the fight for a more just and equitable world can't be done alone, and it can't be done in isolation, but it can only be done in unison, and it only can be done in community. So we thought as the planning team that stories of the spirit will be important to highlight in communities, in our fight to make a more equitable and just world, in our fight to help become to help become more climate resilient. So we are going to ask Rabbi Katie Allen to come on up, and you can feel free to introduce yourself once you get on up, once you come on up here. And one of her hats is the Jewish Climate Action Network, as she wears many hats. And we've just been so extraordinarily blessed to work with her on many initiatives over the years as they are doing outstanding and extraordinary work. So we're so glad that you're here. Please come on up and bless us with the theme breakdown.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm here as the co-founder of the Jewish Climate Action Network and as the rabbi of Mayan Tikva, an outdoor congregation. So I invite you to take a moment and imagine the destruction of your house of worship and parts of all of your community. What would that look like? I invite you to just close your eyes for a moment and imagine that. A buildings inundated by water or burned by fire or in some other way destroyed. And the people that form that community for you, where are they? Who are they? How are you responding? What would you do if that happened to you? Or what have you done if that's happened to you? And from where would your inspiration come? One of the things that I often think about is a story of the destruction of the ancient temple in Jerusalem. That was the heart of worship for the ancient Israelites. That was where they gathered to communicate with God and to be together as a community. And it was totally destroyed, desecrated. It was the only place that they gathered. There was no other option. But they chose not to die as a religious entity, but to be transformed and to transform themselves by shifting where they worshiped and how they worshiped. And out of this, a shift from biblical Judaism to rabbinic Judaism happened. And what we do today is so different than what happened long ago. But it was the courage and the vision and the perseverance of those ancient leaders that means that we're still here today. This is just one story, one specific example of hope, resilience, and the refusal to give up or be destroyed in the face of so much loss, as well as incredible creativity and the courage to fundamentally change. Can you imagine a faith tradition that does not teach hope? Can you imagine a faith tradition that does not teach resilience? Or that doesn't teach about the importance of community? Can you imagine a faith tradition that doesn't teach us caring for the weak, the ill, the bereaved, the poor, and all other vulnerable people? Or that does not teach the importance of pursuing justice inside and out? Can you imagine a faith tradition that doesn't teach digging deep within our souls to find strength and courage when all seems lost? The stories are different in each of our faith traditions, and yet they are fundamentally the same. But if I think about Jews who survived the destruction of their one and only place of worship and their entire way of connecting to God, if I think about Jews who were destroyed, who were survived, who have survived pogrom after pogrom, or expulsion from their land, or torture in foreign lands, or the murder of 6 million during the Holocaust, if some of those survivors were able to maintain their Jewish faith and identity, who am I not to? Who am I not to turn to the wisdom of our sages to find what it takes to bring a community together? to take care of others more in need than myself, to find hope and strength, courage and resilience. And in the face of the greatest existential crisis to ever face humanity, who am I not to turn to my faith tradition? And so I turn to those sources, as we all do after a crisis, to help ourselves, to help each other, and to help all that lives on this beautiful, fragile, strong, and amazing planet. It is not an easy task we face, but that does not mean that we cannot do what needs to be done. So I leave you with just these words from the ancient words of the sacred Torah. Hayidoti bahem hayom et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, hachayim v'hamavet. Natati lefnecha habracha v'hakalkala, uvacharta b'chayim, laman tiyeh ata v'zaracha. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day. I have put before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life, that you and your offspring may live. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those beautiful words, Rabbi Katie. We certainly appreciate the stories, and we certainly appreciate you sharing that narrative. So we will follow along with the next portion of our program, which is the keynote address by Rabbi Greg Hirsch, and I'll just read a little bit of his bio. So Greg grew up in Connecticut and earned his BA in philosophy and religion at George Washington University. After college, setting out to further bridge the gaps between Eastern and Western thought, Greg traveled to the Southeast Asia, where he taught English, lived in a Buddhist monastery, and explored other Eastern philosophies. The following years was spent in Jerusalem before applying to Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, where he was in his final years of study. Rabbi Greg is the rabbi over at the Wake Forest Temple, and we want to invite him up to come and bless us with the keynote. Let's welcome him as he comes.
Rabbi Greg Hirsch from Temple Emmanuel of Wakefield, and I have a little side gig called Burning Bush Adventures, taking Jews out into the wilderness to find God. Perfect, thank you. So this is actually the longest speech I've ever given, so get comfortable. Good evening, and thank you all for coming today. I want to thank all of the previous inspirational speakers, and especially Reverend Vernon Walker, for all his efforts organizing today's event. Does anyone know which verse is at the literal center and the metaphorical heart of Torah? The middle verse of the middle chapter of the middle book of Torah. Leviticus 19:18 is likely familiar to us all. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. According to the great sage Rabbi Akiva 2,000 years ago, this is a fundamental, all-inclusive principle of Torah. Loving your neighbor as yourself, I contend, is like a Buddhist koan, a spiritual challenge that can provoke enlightenment. Loving your neighbor as yourself is by far the most challenging divine command to fulfill. It's much easier to abstain from pork than it is to constantly love the person right next to you. Imagine if they have BO. We all tend to love ourselves the most. It's part of human nature. We all look out for number one. Another famous sage, Rabbi Hillel, used to say, Im ein ani li mi li. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? He too recognized that we're all very self-interested, but he pushed us further, asking, if I am only for myself, ma ani, what am I? The simple meaning of that quote is that we must strike a balance between our own self-interest and helping others. Over these next 20 minutes or so, I hope to show that loving our neighbor as ourselves is contrary to our nature, it's contrary to our current culture, and it's simultaneously one of our best proactive responses to impending ecological crises. To love our neighbors as much as we love ourselves, first we have to have a come to Jesus moment about who we really are. I know you're all unprepared, but we're doing a pop quiz. No pencils necessary. Question 1, what do all humans who have ever lived have in common? Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler were similar in this one respect. There may be several answers to this question, but there's only one answer I'm looking for. Every human being on this earth is a pleasure seeker. Every decision we make is based on pleasure. We're all striving to maximize our pleasure and minimize our pain. As we know, life involves both, but all of us naturally prefer pleasure. In a famous 18th century book, The Path of the Upright, page 1, paragraph 2 reads, quote, "Our sages of blessed memory have instructed us that humans were created for the sole purpose of reveling in the eternal and delighting in the splendor of the divine presence, this being the ultimate joy and the greatest of all pleasures in existence." The book reads, "Our bodies are built to maximize our pleasure, yet most humans will only experience its basest forms, like through eating and procreation. According to the revered author of this work, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, there's much greater pleasure that's attainable to us all. But in order to attain that state of consciousness, we constantly have to make the right choices every moment of every day. Will I remain so caught up in my own life that I miss what's happening around me? How can I use my time and energy to uplift those around me, thereby uplifting myself?" Question 2, are you an adult or a child? We're all adults here, right? Wrong. We're both. The Jewish tradition teaches that a child is one who is ruled by their yetzer hara, the inclination for instant gratification and pleasure. For example, once a child eats cake, they will know forevermore that there are tastier things than cauliflower. Once we get a little older, however, we have a sense of our longevity and make different choices about what we choose to eat. We may choose to eat the cauliflower instead of the cake because now we're thinking of our long-term health as opposed to eating for the sake of pure pleasure. So going by this definition of childhood, I think it's safe to say we're all a mix, both adults and children simultaneously. Sometimes we give in to our desire for instant gratification, and other times we make a different choice for the sake of a greater future benefit. Question 3, are you a human or an animal? Human, right? Wrong. The answer again is both. We certainly have human characteristics, like the ability to do self-analysis or to ponder philosophy, but it's possible that we're more animal than human. All animals, including ourselves, need food, water, sunlight, sleep, and shelter to meet our basic needs. Many humans on this earth are driven solely by material, worldly pleasures like food and sex, and at times, that's us too. While we may think we're so much more intelligent than animals, we display similar social hierarchies, and just like in the animal kingdom, we inhabit a world where might usually makes right. My point is that we have both animal and human elements within us, and while we will always feel those primal urges towards eating and procreation, we have the capacity for much more as humans. It's our unique human capacities, like connecting with the divine or transcending our egos, that can give us the utmost sense of pleasure and fulfillment. So who are we? When we give in to our innate desire for instant gratification, we are embracing the child within us. When we look to material things for happiness, that's the animal within us. Yet there is more to us. The book of Genesis teaches that we're all created in the image of God. We each possess the imprint of divinity. We must strive to transcend our child nature and our animal nature to embrace our divine potential as humans. According to another ancient sage, Ben Zoma, who is mighty? The person who can subdue their desire for instant gratification. That's the quote. When we can put aside short-term pleasure for the sake of long-term fulfillment, we become mighty. Might and strength don't come from physical prowess, they come to us through self-control, through choosing long-term pleasure and fulfillment. And it's not just Judaism. Most every religion teaches us to transcend our childlike and animalistic tendencies in favor of something greater. Yogis, the Hindu mystics, for example, believe that in order for world peace and harmony to come about, every human on earth needs to live a peaceful and harmonious existence. For example, if world peace were to be declared in this moment, it would only last a moment because the vast majority of us humans carry some kind of greed or lust or hatred in our hearts. So it's only a matter of time before those feelings manifest into destructive actions. If we want world peace and harmony, then each of us, and ultimately every human being, must inculcate it within ourselves first. Returning to the quote, "If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I?" We all have to take care of our basic needs. We'll always need food, water, and sleep to survive, but that should not be the totality of our lives. We're capable of so much more. We're capable of loving others as much as we love ourselves, of caring for the needs of others, at least as much as we care for our own. And in doing so, we grow into that imprint of divinity. We become God's emissaries on earth. We become a manifestation of holy compassion. Loving our neighbor as much as we love ourselves doesn't come naturally to us, and that's precisely why it brings out the best in us. It's a practice that ultimately brings us greater pleasure. You've heard the expression, "It's better to give than to receive." And it's true. I hope we've all experienced that pleasure you get from giving the perfect gift to someone. It's a greater pleasure than receiving a gift. Judaism also teaches us to give 10% of our earnings to charities. Most people who give to charity will attest to the wholesome, fulfilling feeling that makes them eager to continue giving away their hard-earned money. Which would make you feel better, spending $100 on a massage or spending $100 to provide 100 meals to families with food insecurity? Both benefit us personally, but the charity should provide a more wholesome long-term happiness than a massage. Also, numerous studies have shown that when people do volunteer work, when they're giving of themselves, it elevates their mood. Feelings of depression or loneliness can fully disappear in moments when we put others before ourselves. Loving our neighbor as much as we love ourselves is both the path and the goal. The Dalai Lama once relayed a story about a man who came to Buddha who was full of anger and sought to experience happiness. Buddha said, "First remove I, the ego, then remove want, that's desire. See, now you're left with only compassion and happiness." I have two more questions for you. Question 4, are you an individual or part of a group? Here in America, many people want to believe that we are pure, rugged individualists. Everything we are and everything we have is a result of our actions and decisions, but that's not at all the full picture. Actually, I'd say all of us are 99% part of a group and 1% of our identities we've created on our own. There's a South African philosophy called Ubuntu, and its fundamental starting point is, I am because we are. Let me explain. I was born in 1985. If I was born in 1885, would I be the same Rabbi Greg Hirsch? Or what if I was born in 1285 or 885? I'm sure I would not look, behave, or believe the way I do. Or what if instead of being born in Connecticut, I was born in Calcutta? I'd be completely different. Or what if my last name was not Hirsch, but Hernandez? So much of our identity and morality is formed and fashioned simply by the people we are surrounded by. Most of these influences we didn't choose. None of us chose when and where we were born, but that origin, like it or not, has come to define our identities and choices much more than we often realize. All this as well is something I believe we can transcend. When we become more aware of who we are and what underlies our thoughts and actions, the choices we make can come from a place of greater agency and greater individual choice. Question 5, are you whole and complete, or are you part of something else? You guessed it, both. Every single thing in this universe, including humans, and every cell within us, and every planet in the galaxy is simultaneously whole and part of a larger whole, W-H-O-L-E. This finger, for example, is whole. It's a finger, a unit. It does everything a finger is supposed to do. My finger is part of my hand, which is part of my arm, which is part of my larger whole body. I learned this principle from Thich Nhat Hanh's book, Understanding Our Mind. It radically transformed how I see myself in the world, and it helped me understand the concept of cosmic oneness, that everything in this universe is simultaneously whole and part of a greater whole. Everything is truly and deeply interconnected. Why is it that we distinguish our finger from our hand, from our wrist, from our forearm, and so forth? Aren't they all part of one organism? In reality, they are. But in our minds, everything in the world is made up of lots of separate and distinguishable parts that all work together in various ways. Buddhas, enlightened beings in every generation, and mystics all over the world report a kind of cosmic consciousness where everything is interconnected, all is one. In Jewish tradition, we say, Ein od milvado, there is only God. The goal of the Jewish mystic is to achieve dveikus, meaning clinging or cleaving to God, experiencing that supernal oneness throughout all of creation. I can't claim to have had this experience, but I do believe that it's attainable for all of us. And I'm quite sure that those who get there fully embody the spirit of pure love for all creation. Maybe that godlike consciousness is our divine imprint, the fullness of our potential as humans. One of the Hebrew names for God is Harachamana, the compassionate one. Maybe that's how we're created in God's image, with our infinite wellsprings of compassion. Loving our neighbor as much as we love ourselves is both the path and the goal. The more we do it, I argue, the more we will want to do it. The rabbis taught mitzvah goreret mitzvah, avera goreret avera. Doing good deeds causes one to do more good deeds. Sinning leads to more sins. That's the end of our quiz. And I wasn't brought in here to preach about interbeing or cosmic consciousness. I felt it was important to lay the groundwork for where I'm going with this. If we're going to love our neighbor as much as we love ourselves, it helps us to understand our relationship to one another, what binds us together. I am because we are. We're not entirely separate entities, you and I. There is some greater whole that we're all a part of. That extends through the gamut of the human and natural worlds. We're all in this together, literally. And the current moment calls for adult humans of any age to lead us through some challenging and necessary changes. And that takes me to what I was invited here to discuss, namely the role of communities in responding to extreme weather. Climate scientists are like our modern day prophets. They're predicting the future with dire warnings. Just like the Hebrew prophets, climate scientists are telling humanity that if we don't fundamentally change our ways, we're bound for destruction. Sadly, the ancient Israelites did not heed the prophetic warnings, and so they lost everything that was dear to them, as Rabbi Allen so eloquently talked about. The ominous signs should be apparent to us all. We've witnessed significant increase in torrential floods, wildfires, and most every summer in the last 5-10 years has been the hottest summer ever on record. And we even know some of the things we have to do to avert further disasters, but change is happening at too slow a pace. When severe weather hits or any kind of ecological destruction occurs, like in East Palestine, Ohio, the federal response seems to be commensurate with the wealth of that region. For example, the government's response to Hurricane Harvey in Texas was much faster and more complete than that of Hurricane Fiona in Puerto Rico. We can't always depend on our government to respond to extreme weather, so we have to look more locally into our own communities, the work of Crew, for assistance and prevention. In the Jewish community, throughout our history, when disasters struck, it was always understood as a divine punishment for our failure to uphold our covenant with God. When the Second Temple was destroyed by the Romans, it was due to our own sin of sinas chinam, baseless hatred between Jews. Had they all unified rather than factionalized, we would have stood a much better chance at defending the Jerusalem temple from the Romans. And that self-punishing thinking extends throughout Jewish history. To this day, there are Jews who believe that even the Holocaust was our own fault, because we embraced modernity too much, maybe for trying to set up a government in Israel prior to the coming of the Messiah. When bad things happen, Jews tend to look inwards to figure out the cause. Where did we err to bring this about? After the fall of the Nazis and the destruction of Germany, the German people spent decades looking inwards, coming to grips with their atrocities. As we look through the modern history, that's unfortunately the pattern. It's only after destruction and calamity that we finally begin to see the error of our ways. For years, people claimed that it doesn't make sense for the US to move away from fossil fuels. It would give an economic advantage to other countries because fossil fuels are cheaper than renewable energy. The thinking being we shouldn't change until the whole world is on the same page as us. Another thing we learned from history is that change always starts at a local level. MLK had to win over Birmingham before he took his message to the whole country. Rabbi Israel Salanter, a 19th century Lithuanian, wrote, quote, "When I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. I found it was difficult to change the world, so I tried to change my nation. When I found I couldn't change the nation, I began to focus on my town. I couldn't change the town. And as an older man, I tried to change my family. Now, as an old man, I realized the only thing I can change is myself. And suddenly, I realized that if long ago I had changed myself, I could have made an impact on my family. My family and I could have made an impact on our town. Their impact could have changed the nation, and I could indeed have changed the world." That takes me back to the idea of loving our neighbor as ourselves. If we can become beings of pure compassion and love, the possibilities are endless. We have the capacity to change ourselves. We all have room for personal growth to become more selfless. If we take the concept of oneness seriously, we have to acknowledge the union of opposites. We're all adults and children, humans and animals, individuals and part of a group. And to take it one step further, we're all climate activists and climate destroyers simultaneously. We're all racists and anti-racists. We're all heteronormative and LGBTQ+. Obviously, each of us is more on one side than the other of these. Oneness entails a union of opposites, that opposites exist on a polarity. They actually go together. We all exist somewhere within these polarities. And the benefit of thinking like this is that points within polarities can be moved. A pure racist cannot be persuaded otherwise. I'm arguing there's no such thing as a pure racist. We're all racists and anti-racists simultaneously. So we can actually reach and maybe even persuade others to move in a more holistic direction. So much of our news media teaches us to hate our neighbors. I'm sure there are people among us today who believe that all Trump voters are sexist white supremacists. And liberals are seen as idealistic, impractical idiots, according to right-wing media. Why can't we see that we're all in this together? We all want to increase our joy and minimize our pain. We all want our children and grandchildren to be able to inhabit this beautiful earth. Hunters tend to care about our ecology, but would we be willing to build a coalition with Second Amendment absolutists? Or with someone who is unvaccinated? Are they out of our coalition? Too easily, we write off potential allies. Too often, we give in to feelings of superiority over those we disagree with. Yes, there are millions of climate change deniers throughout this country, even within our own communities. But I'm here to say they too can be part of our coalition to reduce the impacts of man-made climate change. We will not persuade anyone of our righteous cause if we think we're superior. We have to approach everyone as equals. The 13th century Spanish philosopher Nachmanides went further, teaching, quote, "Consider everyone as greater than yourself. If he is wise or rich, you should give him respect. If he is poor and you are richer or wiser than he, consider yourself to be more guilty than he, and that he is more worthy than you, since when he sins, it is through error, while yours is deliberate, and you should know better." God, the important quote, "God lowers the proud and raises the lowly. So lower yourself and God will lift you up," Nachmanides wrote. If we can display the humility and selflessness to love others like we love ourselves, we have a much greater chance of winning people over to our cause. We need the largest possible coalition. We need all hands on deck to help us win the war against our own destructive lifestyles. Another implication of oneness is that climate justice is connected with all the other kinds of justice we wish to enhance. climate justice, social justice, economic justice, racial justice. They all go hand in hand. The Torah teaches, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Justice, justice shall you pursue. Why is the word tzedek repeated? Justice repeated? When we bring about one kind of justice, there's greater justice reverberating through the whole community. One increase of justice leads to more increases of justice. Coming from a place of loving compassion, we can transform ourselves, we can transform our communities, and hopefully we can transform our world.
Wow, that was a mouthful there. As the rabbi was speaking, I was often reminded of the quote that Dr. King said, that we're all tied in an inescapable garment of mutuality, and what affects one directly affects us all indirectly. Then what else came to my mind was this African proverb that if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So we are so grateful to Rabbi Hirsch for uplifting the importance of unity and solidarity in coalition. And it's with that vein that as we are preparing for extreme weather, that organizations will also need to partner with a progressive federal government to provide resources to those that are disproportionately impacted. And it is in that vein, before we go out to our breakout session, and also want to also mention that the vegan burritos and the vegetarian burritos are here, so please feel free to grab some. But I also want to mention that we have a guest here who's representing the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Mr. Gary C. Barrett, and he's thought it not robbery to come join us. So I want to just quickly read this here. Gary C. Barrett is the director of the United States Department of Agriculture Forest Service National Partnership. He's also adjunct professor at Georgetown University Walsh School of Foreign Service, and also an associate professor at Virginia Tech University. And he thought it not robbery to join us to talk with some of you all in passing around the bipartisan infrastructure law and Inflation Reduction Act. He's also happy to talk about the government's greater desire to participate in climate-related programs nationwide. So we encourage you to see him to learn about some of these initiatives, and he's also personally interested in how he can give examples of how the United States government has worked with faith-based organizations globally to advance the United States government's objectives around climate resilience. So that's just a little bit of things that he could talk about. So we really want you to dig in. Raise your hand, brother, to show folks who you are. All right, we're so glad to have you. So we want to now break out into our breakout groups. And I'm going to read them here. We have breakout group 1, which is led by the HERO organization, Judy Foster. This workshop will be led by HERO, and the breakout group will focus on the intersections of healing through nature and spirit values-based identities. If Judy, you can raise your hand. All right, that's Judy over there. We have breakout group number 2. This workshop will be led by the Massachusetts Interfaith Power and Light in the Tufts Pollinator Garden. This workshop will be led. This workshop will focus on buildings and grounds and what are the ways that faith communities can help build climate resilience. If Reverend Cindy could raise her hand, and I think we have somebody from the Tufts Pollinator group. All right, hey y'all, glad to see y'all. And then we have the virtual facilitator for our virtual audience who can't be here. We have our virtual facilitator group, which will be led by the Venerable, who's already online. And this group will focus on the work that can be done to bring communities together. So we can break out to our groups. If you feel hungry, please grab something to eat. And I think we'll figure out where group 1 and group 2 will be, and then we can assemble ourselves accordingly. Because we want to hear some report backs because everybody couldn't be in everybody's group. So we've got some designated report backs. So we're interested in hearing what has transpired in so many groups. So we're going to do this in 3 phases. So first, we're going to ask our Reverend Cindy Davison to come and to report back on her group. And then we'll ask Judith Foster or Jenny Bottom Carter to come report back on her group. And then we have online folks. And from what I understand and what I've been told is we have somebody that's designated online that will report back. So we'd ask that you come in that order. And we're going to turn the mic over to Reverend Sydney to come and share with us what y'all talked about. Y'all excited about that? All right. All right. All right. We're excited to hear about what you're going to talk about. We'll have your recap.
Well, for all of you who were not fortunate enough to be in that group, we had about a dozen people talking about buildings and grounds. And actually, we spent the majority of the time talking about what I will say is the inherent worth and dignity of all insects and pollinator gardens. We have the privilege of welcoming 2 people from the Pollinators Initiative here at Tufts, Nick and Aaron. Thank you so much for your participation and sharing your wisdom, including the box of bees that got passed around. Very informative. So we talked a bit about our experience either at houses of worship or in our own neighborhoods, at our own home gardens or balconies, about planting or attracting pollinators and use of native plants, that type of thing. Also, the importance of being in nature and being observers of what is going on, whether it's the insects and the butterflies, or whether it's the places that gardens could be and they are not. We talked a bit about the depaving movement, where a patch of earth has been paved over and can be removed, and that can be returned. The earth can be liberated, as I heard one person describe it, and a garden can be planted again so that the earth continues to flourish. We also talked a bit about how these kinds of movements can be very collaborative and build community, that the outreaches to people of many different, let's say, standings in life or orientations, landscape architects, homeowners, church property managers, this type of thing, and that a lot of the things we were hearing about were collaborative, hands-on kind of efforts, educational efforts, teaching workshops, educating our youth about nature and through gardening. The Tufts Pollinator Initiative has a wealth of resources available online. If you just Google them, you will find them. So thank you for that. And we heard a lovely story as we were wrapping up about a multi-faith meditation garden that incorporated native plants that happened to be a student project from someone here on campus. And it just brought to the fore the power of community coming together, the power of sharing our beliefs and our common commitment to the health of the planet and our children and grandchildren coming afterwards, and how small efforts in small places, a college campus, a town square, can create a place of great beauty and strength and give a source of hope. So that's kind of, I think I covered most everything. Otherwise, you can check with Lee and see what I missed. Thanks.
Thank you. I love Massachusetts Interfaith Power and Light and all those hands-on advice that you give for houses of worship to be greener in both body, mind, and spirit. With our breakout session with the Hero Nurturing Center, Judith Foster was who's founder and president of the organization, started with an extensive grounding exercise around the tree in the midst of this town. Well, we're in Medford now, but we're almost in Somerville, which I have read is actually the most densely populated city in New England, I believe. But even here, there are trees, and what Hero teaches is very much, just like you were saying, the appreciation of nature and the importance of connecting with nature. And while we couldn't be in the forest, we could touch a tree, and the ground was too wet really for taking shoes off, so we kept the shoes on and instead decided to touch the tree. And really, through that, connecting with Mother Nature and realizing what we've heard so much today, that we are indeed nature. And when we connect with Mother Nature, we also become stewards of the climate and of Mother Nature, and we want to protect her as she protects us. Our exercise continued with stones, choosing a rock and keeping it on our hands, potentially thinking about where this rock has been, how old can it be, and how it also represents nature and how we are part of nature. We had a brief overview of what Hero Nurturing Center is and does. HERO is an acronym for Healing, Empathy, Redemption, Oasis. And it's about healing the invisible scars. Our two main programs is the Nature Healing Walk, which has been crafted following a curriculum that Judith Foster has created, covering body, mind, and spirit. And also our other leg is making nature prescriptive and advocating politically for this. And we finished off with some music you might have heard, which is also a hugely important resilience factor. I might have missed something, but for you who are here in person, we have leaflets over there, both our petition, also our upcoming series, summer series, Walking the Road to Resilience with Frederick Douglass. It has been made possible through a grant from Mass Humanities, and we have a sign-up sheet for that. Dad is actually holding up the flyer. Thank you, Dad. And we also have a leaflet there, which is with information of a delegation to Cuba, led by Judith Foster, called Healing Our Lands, Healing Ourselves. That was a short presentation of what we did. And we have a website too. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much for those report backs. Now we'll have somebody report back online, and that person knows who they are. So we're gonna get the audio up so we can hear the report back from the breakout group that was online.
Hey, this is Bob Wall. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Good, thank you. I'm the report back person. The overriding question was, what strategy has been successful for you in combating extreme weather? I think the most common response among the 20 of us was about putting our houses in order, our own houses of worship and our personal lives. Also building community through one-to-one conversations, and building community through outreach to other organizations with, I guess, what I would call overlapping interests in watersheds, in ocean cleanup, things like that. Another very interesting suggestion was to get ourselves trained on what to do in case of a disaster. There are community response teams that are available or could be made in a community, and knowing what to do in a disaster lowers the stress of wondering about it. It's also important to know then who are vulnerable in your community. Elders living alone without air conditioning during heat wave, or people who are mobility impaired. Another theme that several people had was learning how different groups relate spiritually to the environment, to forests, to marshes, and each other. And if 1%, if there can be a 1% improvement, it's worth doing to make the planet better. The challenges were how to reach people in their overcommitted lives, and that people in environmental justice areas are the most affected and are the hardest to reach. But in that case, it's always about building trust. And finally, there's an important effort going on to increase the scale of what are often individuals or small group or faith group sized efforts by the Make Polluters Pay program, which is attempting to raise $75 billion from fossil fuel producers to help fund these efforts and expand them. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that. We appreciate the reflections on so many outstanding conversations. We also wanted to point out for personally, particularly for our in-person audience, we have some sheets on the wall with some sticky notes that have instructions. So we invite you to participate in that at some point, or even just to browse through and check it out when you have a moment. We also have an organizational table. So there's many organizations that are represented here. So we have a lot of information on the organizational table. And we also will send out a follow-up email with a lot of different organizational information related to a bunch of different organizations that have partnered with us. We also want to mention that Faith for the Earth, which is an organization that sent us a video, the 7-minute video, but we will include that in the follow-up. And again, that organization is connected with the United Nations, and it's called Faith for the Earth. So again, you will receive that in your email. We also have a CD for our common home, called For Our Common Home, by Linda J. Chase. For our online folks, the website is lindajchase.com, and it really focuses on our common home. And for the in-person folks, if you are interested in this CD, please see Reverend Bessie Sower. Please raise your hand. Thank you. And she will have more information about this particular CD that you can check in with her about. So this proceeds to our next portion of our program, as we're running a little over here. So we're going to bring up Samantha Palladini, who's the Climate Resilience Coordinator at CREW, just to really talk about the Hubs program. That is one of our main features at CREW, is our vast Hubs network. I think it's 131 across the 130 across the United States, and we have one in Canada. So we're going to ask Samantha to come on up and to share with us about the Hubs, to give her overview. Let's welcome her as she comes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your time tonight as we're wrapping up this wonderful evening. And thank you so much for your support for the Interfaith Summit and making this time together meaningful. My name is Samantha Palladini, and I'm the Climate Resilience Hub Program Coordinator with CREW. Many people ask what a resilience hub is, and I'm here to speak briefly on why we need hubs in our communities and to share a story from one of our hubs that moved my spirit. CREW is working to build a network of community institutions such as libraries, places of worship, community centers, universities, and other organized spaces to support them in extreme weather preparedness. We have over 130 hubs across the country, bringing awareness of climate justice and creating action through community engagement, green teams, sustainability, and resources to bring relief during events such as heat waves. Through the Hubs program, CREW's mission is to raise awareness and measures before extreme weather events occur. Some of the questions we ask ourselves are, how do we create a narrative moving forward fueled by hope instead of stagnant with fear? How do we support those most vulnerable, isolated, or impacted by redlining? What can we do to reach out to our neighbors, our emergency managers, and raise the voices of leaders in environmental justice communities? I'd like to share a story of Stacy Henry, a member of Wilmington, Delaware, who was moved to answer the call to climate action after Hurricane Ida caused devastating flooding to her community in 2001. Because larger agencies at the time were stretched thin and unresponsive, Stacy organized relief efforts, disseminated supplies, and helped families find housing. She was recognized as USA Today's Woman of the Year. Since the event, she's advocating for better preparations in response towards extreme weather events. And now Red Cross is working with her as she organizes information sessions, CPR workshops, and gives away free emergency preparedness kits. Wilmington's Police Athletics League Community Center is not only Crew's first climate resilience hub in Delaware, but also the beginning of established hubs in the state. Crew sees a world of climate resilience hubs with varying capacities, while engagement centers hold community events, creating resilience through education, art, media, and workshops. Relief stations are also able to provide various resources during extreme weather, such as serving as heating or cooling centers, providing charging stations, and can provide a list of local amenities to direct those in need of additional assistance. And as climate change makes extreme weather worse and less predictable, emergency services are increasingly overstretched. And we hope to establish emergency shelters in trusted community institutions to help answer the upcoming calls of action. All kinds of hubs are necessary in our climate adaptation journey. In a world that promotes individualism, can we find ourselves to be brave together? If you'd like to learn more about Crew and Crew's efforts in building community resilience through our hub program, please contact us through our website or attend our upcoming summer info session. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Samantha. We appreciate that. And one of the things that she highlighted is the critical work and need of organizations to prepare their communities for extreme weather. The UN is very clear that we will be dealing with sea level rise at least until 2050, even if the world were to stop polluting, because we know that climate change is not a new phenomenon. And we at Crew also provide resources. Besides doing summits, we also provide energy efficient air conditioner units to those who live in underserved communities, as we have been doing this work for several years now. We have provided energy efficient air conditioner units to folks that live in Dorchester, Mattapan, Brockton, in the South End. And the commonality with all these communities is that they suffer from the urban heat island. But we know that this takes financial resources. So we want you, in your time and spare time, is consider to donate to Crew so we can carry on this work, because we know that this work is not done in isolation. And we know that as a nonprofit, certainly in order to provide these resources and to provide these hubs with information to prepare their community, it certainly costs. So we want you to consider donating. If you go to our website, you will see the donate tab. So we want you to consider donate, and it is tax deductible. You know, in my faith tradition, there's the scripture that talks about reap what you shall reap what you sow, and that if you sow, the windows of heaven will be open, and there will be blessings that be poured upon you, that there will not be enough room to be received. But I don't know how about y'all, but I like blessings that overflow. I like when my cup runneth over. Y'all a little quiet today, but that's all right. But I don't know about y'all, but I'm just so happy that when blessing others, that it'll come back some 5-fold, some 10-fold, some 100-fold. If you give in faith, I promise you, it'll come back to you in unexpected ways. I don't know how many of y'all experienced that in your life, where y'all blessed somebody and then it came back in an unexpected way. So we're asking you to take some time after the summit to consider to donate to Cru so we can continue this life-changing work. And we promise you we'll continue to distribute, we'll continue to educate, inform, organize, and mobilize because that's what we're about. So we want to go to the next portion. We want to go to the next portion of our program here, and it's revolving around bringing the Interfaith Singers back coalition. And then after that, we're going to ask Anthony, the humanist chaplain, to come on up. Hey, y'all come on up, welcome them. Let's welcome them with a round of applause. And we're coming down to the home stretch. And then after that, we're going to ask the humanist chaplain, Anthony, I don't want to mispronounce your last name, but you're somewhere in here. Oh, there you go. Oh, there you go, my brother. All right. Then we're going to ask you to come and do the sending words, and then we'll let you go. But let me hand this mic over to you.
Thank you so much. As was stated, we, Jenny and I have been collaborating for the past several years, and we call our group What the World Needs Now, Interfaith Coalition Singers. And our mission statement is to support interfaith coalitions through music and the arts. I was speaking earlier and to some folks, and when we think about things like the civil rights movement, and for the things that are called for right now, those were done through interfaith coalitions. And I think the important part of that is the interfaith part, because it's the faith part that informs our response to the things that come at us in the world. And our hope is to support events like this where we can come together in common cause, on common ground. That is where the solutions come from.
Wonderful. And I want to recognize one of those connectors here in the room. That's Karim El Razaz from the Cambridge Mosque, from the Islamic Center of Boston, who is constantly putting on these things, and where we have been singing
Yes,
as well.
indeed.
So
Is
it's
Ambrose
lovely.
out there?
And we have lovely Ambrose here from the Poor People's Campaign singers, as well as Amandine sitting here. So there are so many wonderful, wonderful coalitions that we all can be part of, that we all are part of. And this song is written by the lovely Rabbi Shoshana Friedman, who spoke at the last year's Cru Interfaith Climate Summit. So we will borrow that from her. The tide is rising, and so are we. Sing along. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising,
and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be.
The task is mighty. The task
Is
is mighty.
mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be.
The land is holy. The
The
land
land is
is holy.
holy, and so are we. The land is holy, and so are we. The land is holy, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be.
The storm is raging.
The storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be.
The sun is rising. The sun is
rising, and so are we. The sun is rising, and so are we. The sun is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be.
Last verse, the world is ready. The world
is ready, and so are we. The world is ready, and so are we. The world is ready, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be, to be. This is where we are called to be. Yes, this is where we are called to be.
As we depart from the summit and return to our chosen families and communities, let us reflect about the unknown and known stories throughout time, the stories that we have lived, and the stories that are yet to emerge. Let us critically reflect upon the call that our traditions, philosophies, religious expressions the civic mandate to awaken our consciousness that we are not above nature, not above ecologies, but that we are part of nature, that we are part of ecosystems with other sentient beings that are calling us as well to a higher awareness, of higher responsibility, of higher obligations, to be aware that as we create, we also unfortunately destroy. Let us reflect deeply that where our traditions, experiences, and histories are silent, that from us emerges a prophetic call to be agents of change, transformation, healing, and collective liberation. May it be, que así sea. Ashe.
All right, thank you all. And that is the formal conclusion of our program. And we look forward to doing this again next year. And yeah, I think we have plenty of food if you want to take some stuff to go. Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right, thank you. And we'll sign off for our online audience. Thank you for being with us, and we appreciate you. And we appreciate our in-person audience.